today I have my Trailblazer interview with none other than the new and aspiring YouTuber PnwDev. Dev, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey guys, my name's PnwDev, up and coming, Portland Trailblazers YouTuber. Just started here about less than a month ago, as the time of recording at least, and have about 12 videos on my channel just dissecting all things Blazer related content from player breakdowns, hypothetical scenarios, and even some general NBA content. So, yeah, just having fun with it though.
Yeah. So it's a pleasure to have you on, man, really. Um, I'm gonna start off here with a couple questions. And the first question I have for you is that obviously you and I would both agree this team is not aiming to win 40 or 50 games. So with that in mind, for you, what would be deemed as a successful season for this Portland Trailblazers team?
Yeah, that's a tricky question because I know at least for Blazer fans, depending on who you ask, that question could be, based on wins or based on like how the lack thereof wins that they get.
Mhm.
Because with Cooper Flag coming up in this draft, it's something that I know a lot of fans are saying like, man, anything we can do to get rid of some of the veterans on the team, like Jeremy Grant's. I've seen DeAndre Ayton's name tossed out there as a guy who should be on the trade block this offseason, because let Donovan Clean kind of run the show in that sense. And if we're bad, hey, better chance of getting Cooper Flag. Whereas other fans are saying, hey, we have Denny AA now. Like he's been a forward that kind of can do it all that we've been missing for a while. And if we keep Jeremy Grant, excuse me, and have Scoot Henderson developing off the bench, and you're running with a lineup of Anthony Simons, Shane Sharp, Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton, then they're like, man, why can't we make a push in even in a busy, loaded Western Conference to hopefully make, maybe even get close to a play-in spot, depending on how injuries play out. But for me personally, I think that a successful season would be a season where we're still in the lower ranks as far as wins and lottery level goes. Like
Mhm.
I'm expecting the Blazers to be bottom two in the Western Conference, probably right there in the bottom four of the whole NBA this year. But if we could see good progression from Scoot Henderson, I think a lot of fans were concerned about him going into
Yeah.
this offseason after seeing the rookie season he had, especially with the high hopes he had going in. And so, man, if he can progress and if
Mhm.
he can show that that rookie year slump was just kind of a rough season, but he really put it together in the offseason. Shane Sharp develops a little bit. Klingon looks like a long-term piece of this team, but they're still bad as far as ranking goes. And you have a good chance of getting Cooper Flag or, an Ace Bailey kind of guy in a loaded
Yeah, yeah.
draft
Yeah.
class next year. That'd be successful to me.
I see. What's actually super interesting is you led me into another one of my questions, which, as someone who's watched way more Scoot Henderson games than me, I'm curious what to you could be done to ensure that his sophomore season sees significant progress in comparison to his more lackluster rookie season as a whole.
Yeah, see that gets into another tricky topic, and I made a video on this with Anthony Simons. He is a very controversial piece to this team right now because on the one hand, he's like the best player that this team has, but on
Right.
the other hand, a lot of people, and I think including myself, would probably argue that Anthony Simons being traded would help open the floodgates in that sense for Scoot Henderson. Like just give him the ball, give him playing time. He's our starting point guard with Shaden Sharp at the two. And that's just like what you're putting all your investment in, because even though Anthony's great and he's, I wouldn't argue that he's probably the best player on this Blazers team. But if he's taking minutes away and if the ultimate goal is to become a championship contender one day, then I think you want to pour in and do everything you can to see guys like Scoot Henderson and Shane Sharp reach their ceiling, and like again, Anthony Simon's great, but you kind of know what he is,
Mhm.
borderline all-star player,
Right.
22 points a game, like 5 assists. Like he had a great season last year, even with some of the more advanced stats as far as on ball gravity and Like he had a great season,
Mhm.
but man, if you think Scoot's ceiling's higher than that, then I don't see why you don't pour into that. And if that doesn't work, because if Anthony's going to be our number one guy, then I already think that, the rebuild isn't off to a great start because even though he's like a little Dame protege in that sense, I don't think he's the kind of guy that could lead a team to
No.
the conference final. So all that to say, I'd probably move off of Anthony Simons if you can find a good trade package for him and just let
Mhm.
Scoot take the reins as the point guard going forward.
No, I for sure can see that. I only asked that because a big series I do on my YouTube is called the Rebuild Report, where I go in on all these, struggling rebuilding teams and, give a little update or progress report on how they're doing. And for Scoot specifically, when I would have to talk about him, the shot not falling, I felt like would be a low blow, especially because, coming out of the G League, that's what everyone sort of said wasn't there and would need to be developed. What surprised me more was, and I guess this is another question for you, has his finishing improved since the beginning of the season? Because coming into the year, that was the big selling point, was that he was a freak athlete, great finisher. He just needed to develop the jumper, and he's a great playmaker.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that kind of shocked a lot of people where it was like, hey, his 3-point shooting might not be the greatest. His even, free throw line and beyond distance might not be the most accurate, but where he's going to shine is using that athleticism and his, lineman like body in that sense to get to the
Yeah.
basket, dunk the ball, like, kind of get reverse layups around people and stuff. And so when he was missing a lot of them, I think to a lot of Blazer fans, that was definitely, a shock and where the concerns really started. Um, and I think part of it, I will not all of it, but I think a good chunk can definitely be chopped up to the fact that this team was just so new. Anthony
Mhm.
Simons is a player who is the longest veteran team, and there was only a couple players, including Shane Sharp and Jabari Walker, who were on this team for more than a season. At the start of
Right.
or had a full season under their belt going into this last season, and so I think with Scoot Henderson, who was, used to playing with guys who he's known or played with for a couple years and uh, kind of knew how they played a little bit more. It was just for the whole team such a shakeup as far as the roster being kind of reconstructed after Dame got traded. Um, but regardless, I think that definitely led to more confusion, not passing up shots, Scoot feeling like he should take more shots than he probably should have, um, as well as just not being as comfortable out there as he probably should have. Plus, just
Mhm.
getting used to the NBA defenders, and kind of
Right.
just finding his rhythm there. But yeah.
Have you watched Summer League at all for you guys this year? Any interesting takes?
I've paid attention a little bit, mostly a little bit of box score watching,
I feel
primarily
you.
keeping my eye. Yes, yeah, haven't watched too many games, keeping my eye on Donovan Clingan, and because I think he's a guy that if I would have loved if Scoot would have played in the summer league because him and Clingan, I think it would have been great for them to get some reps
Mm.
together as far as pick and rolls and all that sort of stuff goes, and just see how they flow together. But Donovan Clingan's been a lot of fun to watch and definitely looks like that defensive anchor, I think, and a lot of other fans think that he can become.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about, speaking of clinging, that was a huge W for you guys. For me, that you guys didn't have to trade him anything, trade any picks or move up or move down, try and get him. You were able to naturally get him with your pick. I'm curious, what do you think of DeAndre Ayton? Should y'all give him another year, or should you put your eyes out and see if you could trade him?
Um, I think they should keep DeAndre Ayton for a little while longer because even though, and this might seem like a hypocritical take because Anthony Simons is the same age as DeAndre Ayton, but I think DeAndre Ayton can fit this timeline in the sense that he, while Donovan Clingan is someone who I think Blazer fans hope is the long term anchor of our defense, Rudy Gobert style center going forward.
Mhm.
Right now, DeAndre Ayton is just so much better than him just on a night to night basis, especially in this last few months of this past season from February onwards, and he was like a walking 20 and 10 a night, and really showed those improvements. But I totally understand the concerns where a lot of Suns fans, would say, hey, he'll have stretches like that, and then he'll have stretches where he just doesn't seem to care and he's not playing as hard. And we've all seen clips of him refusing to jump up and grab rebounds in the
Yeah,
playoffs
yeah.
or whatever it might be. And so I understand the concern there as well. But I think with kind of the Twin Towers lineup they have with DeAndre Ayton and Donovan Clingan right now, it's a great scenario where even though, yes, we had Ayton on the team, I was personally very happy with the Donovan Clingan pick because worst case scenario, Donovan Clingan in a year shows he's way better than Ayton. And then you have someone better than Ayton who's only, what would be 21
20.
years
Yeah,
old
I'm
or
about to say
whatever it is.
21, 22.
Yeah, and it's like, and then if he's not better than Ayton, then what? You have a pretty solid defensive backup big. And so either way, I don't see I could see harm in moving off of Ayton, but I don't see any harm in holding on to him for at least another season
Right.
and then just kind of seeing how Donovan Clingan adjusts to the NBA level. Kind of
Mhm.
like I always think about Jokic and Nurk in Denver when they were drafted, where even though Nurkic was the guy who seemed to be the better one, and Jokic was always coming off the bench. It was like, man, as soon as Jokic got his time to play, he just proved that he was the better player, and so they moved off of the
Right.
worst of the two, obviously being Nurkic. So it's like I don't see why that can't be a scenario that plays out well for this Blazers team going forward.
That's so interesting. I never even thought about a Nurkic, Jokic, situation comparison. I understand you for sure are not saying that, this kid is about to be Nikola Jokic off the bench and change franchise guy. But even if he turns out to be a Rudy Gobert esque, defensive changer for your team, that's already, changing the landscape of everything. And then I had a question for you. This is something I never really hear you guys talk about. What do you think about Chauncey Billups? Should he still be your head coach?
Yeah, Chauncey Billups. He's another very controversial topic among the Blazer fans. I think among everyone can kind of agree that he's not a great coach, and I think even Chauncey was hoping that because when he took the job, the Blazers were having playoff hopes, and that was the year that Dame got hurt and sat out half the season with his core injury and all this stuff. And so it's like, man, I think that his idea of what he was taking over when he signed up for this coaching gig was probably a bit different as well. But among media members, even among Blazer fans, I don't think anyone would really make a strong argument that he's been a great coach. And I think where the line is drawn is he causing harm to this team, as far as
Mhm.
developmental purposes, because I don't know if other fans of different teams have seen this, but at least among Blazer fans, it's like the players cannot talk highly enough of Chauncey Billups. Anytime his name is brought up, anytime they're asked about Chauncey as a coach in interviews or press conferences or whatever it is, they're praising this guy as much as they know how. It seems like I think that they have been paid or something because of the things they're saying about him. Like they're just so nice to him and thinking that he's the best, which I think if you have a coach who's in that situation and a team that's in this situation where they're not ready to compete,
Right.
it's like, yes, if you had, you know, one of the better coaches in the NBA, would the Blazers have had 4 or 5, maybe 6 at most or whatever? That's probably even getting a little extreme. More wins last year, like sure, maybe they would have had a couple, but like the team that's on the court, right, is what's winning or losing you the games at the end of the day.
Right.
Because I think Chauncey could have a successful team if he had, LeBron and AD and Steph Curry and Luca and like this stacked team. Like he could probably coach a team to the finals too. And so, in my opinion, if he was fired, I definitely wouldn't be upset about it. But I don't think you're hurting anything by holding on to him for
Okay.
another season till his contract's up, which as of right now seems like that may be the case because I feel like it's not often you see coaches who go into their final year not with an extension in place. It's either an extension or they're fired because the team knows they're not going to extend him. So the
Yeah.
fact that he's going into his final season with no extension
No.
in
Yeah.
place or anything is definitely interesting. But
My guy, you give very, very modest takes. And I commend you for it because, a lot of sports fans, one way or another, they're on an extreme, even myself included at times. Um, So I commend you a lot, especially as an upstart content creator coming out already knowing you know where you want to stand on something and it doesn't have to be an extreme. Um, and I think it's interesting, especially when you mention, right, like Chauncey's on that last year of his contract. I know for sure you guys are hurt that you couldn't get someone like Kenny Atkinson that was available. Because I know when I did an interview for the Wizards, part of this episode, a huge part of even his hopes and for the organization was to get Kenny Atkinson. So I know that hurts a lot. And I guess now for Chauncey, this really is his make or break year because now you have multiple young pieces, right? You have Klingon, you have Scoot, Shaden, possibly moving off assignment, so you might not want to include him. And at this point, it's sort of like, can he actually help build with you and around you guys? Or is he sort of like, unfortunately, wrong coach, wrong situation, and we just kind of move from there? And of course, I'm curious, what was your reaction to that absolute steal of a trade that you guys pulled off to get Denny AA for basically one of your first rounders and another one of them, I believe, in like 2029?
Yeah, so Denny of Dio, I always just viewed as a player who like he is the core right now to the Wizards and what they have. And when they, had the second pick lined up, I was like, man, my initial thoughts seeing that they got to move up to pick number 2 in the draft was like, man, they have Denny, whoever they're able to draft, like Jordan Poole probably won't be there long term, but he can at least be part of the team for now. And like thinking they definitely had a nice
A little
little
core
core
going.
going on.
Yep.
Yeah, like they had something really promising. And because Denny's one of those guys where, dude, as soon as he signed that contract extension, it's like, man, this is a guy who I could and I was even talking to some other Blazer fans about this probably near a year ago now, but it's like he was a player who I viewed as the next like Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. He's on this killer contract over the next 4
Yep.
years, but he's already like he hasn't even started the contract extension yet, and he's already deserving of more than the highest paid
Yeah.
year during that 4 seasons, which is going to be this upcoming season because it's declining. But it's like he can play defense, he can pass, he can score. Like he's just one of those perfect complementary pieces that every team wants. And so when I saw the Blazers traded for him, I think initially it said Adrian Wojnarowski said that they traded the 14th pick in the draft and then like a pick swap or something. And I was like, there's no way Cronin was able to pull that off. And then I saw that it was the second of 3 picks the Blazers have, the second worst or the middle one of those 3 they included in 2029, which I think that balanced it out a little bit in my head because especially as a rebuilding team, I feel like Denny Avdia wasn't even a guy that Blazer fans thought they would
No,
ever get. It
I
was
don't
like,
think
yeah, he's a
anyone
great player,
did.
would love to
Yeah.
have him. Exactly. I don't think anyone thought the Wizards were
No.
going to move off of him. And so to see that the Blazers acquired him, especially in our situation, it's like, yeah, I mean, he fits our team perfect, I think. And I'm so stoked that we have him, but also like for a team that was at least it seemed like in they were trying to acquire picks and acquire assets as opposed to dishing them out. So then to give up 2 first round picks for him, I was kind of shocked they did that, but also I'm very happy with the trade. And I don't know how Cronin managed to land Denny Avdia, but I'm stoked he did.
I was about to say that's a huge win for you guys. That one of those picks in the trade are already gone, right? They already used it to give up Carrington. Um, and now you guys can sort of rest easier knowing you're not about to give up a free second overall pick next year or something. Um, and then I'm curious, what do you think is your ideal starting lineup for this Blazers team?
I think going into this season, I have 2, one that I would hope for and one that I think is realistic. My realistic starting lineup is probably Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons. And I already know if Blazer fans are watching this, they're probably freaking out thinking, how on earth would Shane Sharp come off the bench? But I think given his surgery and given his, injury history this last season, I think if I had to guess, because it seems like they're still kind of working on really getting him ramped up to full like 5-on-5 play. And so
Mhm.
my guess is that they're not going to start him off in night 1 playing starter minutes. So I think night 1 it'll probably be Scoot and Anthony as well as I think that'll be important to see how Scoot's developed. And then assuming they don't trade Jeremy Grant, then probably Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant. I'm guessing Denny would start at the 3, and then Ayton would play the 5. But what I would hope for is that Scoot and Shaden can start alongside each other. Anthony would probably never come off the bench, so that would hint at hopefully they would be able to get something good for him and just give the keys to Shane and Scoot, and then Denny, Grant, and Ayton. But hey, if they're able to trade Jeremy Grant somehow and they want to start all 3 guards with Denny and Ayton, I'd be up for that too. But
Interesting. So either way, you think Klingon is not a starter. For now, he is your backup big.
I think night 1 he's definitely a backup, and I think unless he really like proves that he's too good to be a backup early on, then
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see him probably averaging right around that 17 to 19 minutes a night, just because even in this last year at UConn, he was only averaging about 22 minutes a game. So I don't see him jumping into a starter role where he'll be playing, near 30 minutes each night from night 1. But I could definitely see it towards the end of the season, depending on how the season goes for him.
Okay, I see you. So we started off this interview with the question of what would be considered a successful season for your team. Now, obviously, again, it's evident that we are not talking about wins and losses for this team in terms of success. But I guess for you, in what ways could this upcoming season be considered a disappointment or a failure even?
I think a disappointing season for the Blazers would just be kind of like what this last season was, where you go into it hoping to gather a lot of information about what you have. And the hope this year is the same, where I'm hoping that in May or April or whatever, when the season's over, the Blazers have a good understanding of what they have and who will be on this team long term and who won't be. And if we get to the end of the season and Scoot has another down year where he's not shooting very well, he's struggling to finish at the basket, he's, turning over the ball like crazy. Shane Sharp's kind of in and out because he's hurt and has a couple flashes of good games like he did last year, but nothing consistent. Anthony's playing the same. It's like essentially a repeat of last year would be a disappointment in my mind, because I think last year was really the year where it was like, hey, we have these 3 guards. Obviously, not all 3 are going to be on the team long term, but who will be on the team long term? And we didn't really get any clear answers to that, because Scoot, obviously had the down year and started to play well, which was hopeful at the end of the season. Shane Sharp had a few good games, but obviously got injured and only played 32 games that year. And Anthony Simons, I think, was kind of the bright spot for a lot of fans, where even given the adversity of getting double teamed and the extra defensive attention, he was still able to have a pretty good season. But aside from that, there's not much info they took away, and I think a disappointing year would be seen a repeat of that, where you're still kind of left wondering, is Scoot the guy? Is Shaden who we think he is? Is DeAndre Ayton a long-term piece? Like, what if he has half the season where he's kind of down in the mud, not playing very well, and then half the season where he's playing great? You'd still be left wondering with him. So I think if there's a lot of question marks at the end of this season, that's where I'd consider it a disappointment.
Interesting. So you are a guy that seems super in touch with your fan base, the pulse of the team, like what everyone's thinking or feeling. For you, as someone who I've talked about seems to be a more modest guy anyways, what is a take that sort of makes you side eye and go like, what the hell are we talking about here? What's going on?
I think the overreactions on Scoot would probably be the biggest one that I can think of off the top of my head, because there are a lot of fans who have, their opinions, and I mean, might even go in the realm of bias, as far as like, Anthony's been around a while. We've watched Anthony grow, and I think there's a lot of fans who think he still has a lot of room to grow, and other fans who think he's kind of at his pretty close to what he's going to be, which I would say I definitely lean that way. But so then with that comes a lot of, I think, whether people like it or not, overreactions on Scoot, where they just see the rookie year and the struggles that he had, and Now I see fans that are saying, hey, Scoot's a bust. He's done for. There's no hope in him. He was supposed to do all this and that and do ABC and score like this. And the fact that he only did this, like there's zero hope for him. And I just think there's a good chunk of this fan base that might not kind of sit down, breathe, look at the stats, compare, and look at like Darius Garland, De'Aaron Fox. Like there's a lot of guards who averaged worse seasons than Scoot did this year and have gone on to become all-stars by the end of their rookie contract, you know? And so, and like even Anthony Simons, yes, he didn't play nearly as much, but like his rookie season was pretty rough. He didn't play much. And look at what he's become, you know? And considering where Scoot is, it's like I think the overreactions are pretty crazy with him. But also, uh, I think a lot of people take those 2 years in the Ignite as like he should be. That's a lot of people see those 2 years as 2 years of NBA experience, basically, where they're like he should already be 2 years ahead of everyone else,
Right.
as opposed to like those were essentially his college years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the overreactions on Scoot are definitely the biggest take that I see the most common. That definitely gets under my skin a bit, and sometimes I have to hold my hands back from typing and replying to them.
Mm. Okay, okay. Big Scoot guy over here. I see you. I see you. So let me ask you though. This is a bit random, I know, but it just sort of popped in my head as we were talking. What do you think about Jeremy Grant? Are you trying to get him out of here too? Are you similar with Aiton, maybe get another year? Or are you like, hey, we got to get this going?
Jeremy Grant to me is very similar to Anthony Simons, where if there's a trade for him, then I don't see why you don't take that opportunity and run with it. That kind of gets into some nuanced stuff of like what's considered a good trade. Um, I know there's some fans that are saying like, hey, if we could get one first round pick and just salary filler, like the benefits we would get off of moving off of him would be worth it. Meanwhile, other fans compare the haul that Mikal Bridges got and then are like, well, if obviously Mikal's better, but then if you kind of dial that back down, if Jeremy's 30% worse, well, then we'll take 70% of what the Mikal package was. So we need 3 first round picks or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's definitely some nuance there as far as what would be good value for Jeremy Grant. I I honestly wouldn't mind if he's on the team, because if there's not a trade out there, like I know there's been those reports about the Lakers having interest in Jeremy Grant, and the whole commotion there is over a first round pick. Blazers want 2, Lakers only want to give up 1. If Cronin's holding the line at 2 first round picks, if they're not offering it, I'd rather keep him than give up a first round pick worth of value. Um, but also if they call saying, hey, we have 2 first round picks, and then just whatever kind of scrap filler to
Mm.
get it done, and I see that trade's reported, I'd be pretty happy with it.
That is so interesting because for me, I feel like it's interesting how you guys look at Grant as a big piece for future assets. I feel like that's Simons for you guys. Jeremy Grant, I think, is in his early 30s or just turned 30. Huge money too for the deal. Since this extension was signed, and basically, the Blazers waved the white flag on the whole Dame era. But I find it super interesting that that's what you guys think. Because again, I feel like Simons for a team like Orlando, where they really need or want guard play. Now, obviously, I think that might be a bit scuffed with the acquisitions of KCP or whatnot. But he's the one I think that you could trade to a team that, if they're desperate enough or willing enough, you could get 2 to 3 first rounders. And then next thing you know, this rebuild kind of gets juiced up for you guys.
Yeah, that's kind of what Blazer fans have been hoping for. Is Orlando was always the team that it was like, man, if the Blazers can move off of Anthony Simons, Orlando just seemed like the perfect fit as far as where they're at and wanting to compete, the players on the team, what they could give up for Anthony Simons, and all of it just seemed like such a perfect fit. But then I feel like with the re-signing of Gary Harris and KCP, I don't know if they'd be interested in an Anthony swap. And I think also a lot of teams, or a lot of fans, excuse me, are under the impression that what his value is to us, other teams wouldn't value. Like other teams would value him the same as like an Emmanuel Quickly or Cam Thomas or
Mm,
something like that. Whereas I think a lot of Blazer fans, you know, you can argue rightfully so or not, but have, the more like, oh, he could be like an all-star Dame Jr. Like he, if teams aren't off, if his market isn't nearly what we think it's worth, that's why you get a lot of fans who are kind of
yeah.
pushing back on the idea of moving off of him.
All right, Dev. So we're just about to wrap this up. Do you have anything you want to tell the people? It could be about your platform, whatever it is. Do you have any final thoughts, I guess, for the viewers?
No, man. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity to jump on for the interview. If you guys are Blazer fans or want to check out some Blazer content, please feel free to check out my channel. I'm sure you'll put it on screen there
Of
to start
course, there'll
there
be a
somewhere.
link.
But you
There'll
can
be
just
a link for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. If you just look up PnwDev on YouTube, you should be able to find me. But I try to upload 2-3 videos a week and cover all things Blazer content and hopefully general NBA content as well sometime here in the future. So I just appreciate the opportunity, man.
Hey, man, of course, listen, it's the least I can do. I'm really trying to show the power that this NBA community has working together. So that's my only big hope or desire from this whole project. So thank you again, man, for coming on. Have a beautiful rest of your day.